nature has many of these natural defenses against climate change or sea level rise or even floods. Mumbai is the best example. So in Mumbai you have a big complex called the BKC, Bandra Kurla complex, and you have a different expressways. So when they and the airport, the huge airport. So when they built this airport, this Bandra Kurla complex, which is like several acres, and the expressway, they squeezed out all the mangroves there and the river. So there was a Miti river, which when floods come, used to used to bring the water away into the sea. And also these mangrove areas, the marshy lands, used to absorb this water, extra water. But now that these are squeezed out, now the Miti river is like a canal. You can recognize it as a river anymore. And mangroves out this. There has been a huge percentage of reduction in the mangroves because it has been covered with concrete jungle now. So the lungs of the city is gone. So when you have, and now heavy rains are impinging every year. So every year you can say for certainty that Mumbai is going to have a flood. But still it's not a priority as well. So some local groups, NGOs have been working on trying to increase the mangrove cover and all. But I think there should be a strong policy to preserve these kind of natural defenses along with artificial, because when you have huge heavy rains along with the sea level rise or high tide, the water doesn't flush out. So the cities like Mumbai can be flooded for a long period, and this can happen for Kerala as well. Like for 2018 floods, it coincidentally occurred with a high tide, so the water didn't flush out. Usually we have in Kerala we have this topography with highland, midland, and lowland. So generally when you have heavy rains, it gets washed out in a few hours or a day or so. But coincidentally that time it occurred in 2018. It occurred along with a high tide. Records show that. So that kind of prolonged the floods as well. So multiple factors are affecting all together. We try to put the blame on either dams or rains or forecasts or mining. All these factors are affecting all together as compound events.
So you were saying that the 2018 flood was pretty much contributed by different factors, not just water. But did anyone kind of predict the nature of this before it happened?
So generally, even in our research, we have seen that over parts of Western Ghats and over Central India as well, because the climate is changing, the frequency of extreme heavy to extreme rains, that's like about, you can say 150 millimeter per day. That's like heavy rains. Those are increasing. There's a threefold increase in these kind of rains.
But the total rainfall has decreased.
At the same time, the total rainfall has decreased. There's a weakening of the monsoon, especially in some parts. So the total rainfall has decreased, even in Kerala or Central India. Total rainfall which you receive in a season has decreased. But the heavy rains have increased threefold. So I published this research in 2017, just before the floods happened. And in 2018, we had the floods of a century, and they were forecast. So you can think about in a climate change level how generally it is changing, but with that you cannot say okay this year or this time heavy rains are going to happen. You can say generally the rains are increasing, and future projections also show that the chances of these rains, we say the chances or the probability of these rains are increased. We may not say okay this year, but Then we have weather forecast. It's like maybe a week before or 5 days before we can say that okay, heavy rains are going to happen. And if you look back at the reports from the Met Department or other agencies, it does show that heavy rains are going to happen. Like it showed like 5 days before or something in the forecast. So heavy rain forecast was there. But the problem in these forecasts are that it talks about how the rains are. It doesn't give the ground reality, how it works along with the terrain, with the slope. Like Western Ghats, you have a huge slope. So if you have like quarry, if you have different kinds of land use, land change on Western Ghats, it's already a land prone area because of the huge slope. Some areas like 20-degree slope, 40-degree slope. Yeah. So with this kind of slope, if you have heavy rains interacting with the terrain, the geography, and the people also changing the land, it can cause landslide, and it brings all the water upside along with it, along with the boulders and all. So this kind of flood, I mean, it's not incorporated in these models. So we saw that heavy rains are going to happen, but we didn't know how it's going to manifest on ground. So that now I think the local governments and scientists are also realizing the problem is we are all working in narrow areas. So the Met Department spoke with the rainfall forecast monitoring and all. There will be water board, Central Water Commission, and other bodies which are under different ministries, other ministries working with, and the Agriculture Department, which is another ministry. So all these departments have to work together, both in monitoring and forecasting, and these models have to come together, like hydrological model for groundwater, how the groundwater is changing, surface water is running off through the rivers and all, because they have the measurements. So all this have to, I mean, different departments and different models have to be put together to give a proper forecast for this.
So it's high time for the decision makers to actually utilize the science or the facts that's provided by the scientist community. But
Exactly.
is it actually happening? Or is it
like I said sometime before, like in Kerala, some panchayats, they decided to go on carbon neutral and have been working on environmental related projects so that they can, even if they cannot save the entire globe, they can save their panchayat, their village. Yeah. So we need that kind of work at different levels, whether it's panchayat level, because sometimes what happens globally, it might have the impact on your local level also, but how it manifests might be different. So some regions might have dam. Yesterday I went to Pathanamthitta, and that region is not a coastal region. One thing they can work on is the rivers, and they are cleaning up their rivers. They have some projects for cleaning up the rivers and all, and you can see that before it used to be a dumping graveyard, some of these rivers. Now it is clean, but it needs maintenance. So we need to probably, and this, when I asked those people, what they have told is that I asked them how it started, because it needs a good deal of both the government help and the people help. So they said the village president was keen on that. So which means that we need to elect the right people, both at local levels and higher levels, parliament levels, to work on climate change action. And I see that some places are doing that, but some places they are not doing that. I am generally quite optimistic person. So even if I see, so generally the problem with carbon dioxide is that it's well spread, but at the same time it is a long lifetime. So the carbon dioxide which we have emitted right now will stay for decades or centuries. Maybe if you want to remove half of it, it will take at least 50 years. But if you want to fully remove it, the carbon dioxide, naturally remove it, it will take 1,000 centuries or more.
Oh yeah.
That is, if we consider we stop all the carbon emissions right now, industries, cars, everything, all the countries, US, India, everywhere. Yeah. Still, the impact will be for several decades or centuries. But that, that means that we will get to see these kind of events more. But we can stop it from accelerating much more than that. We don't want more and more floods than what we are having right now, or more and more heat waves than what we are having right now. And we can build adaptation measures both locally and globally. So that's what the point of this Paris Summit, COP25 and everything is, to see that we try to keep the global temperature, global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius, so that it doesn't go beyond the number of extremes, the intensity doesn't, blast out. That is too much, nobody can live.
Okay.
And coming to the optimistic part, if you see the science in India or elsewhere, there is it has been going at a very quick pace. And at political level, we start throwing mud at others, saying that, okay, you are the one who have been emitting. It's the US who have been emitting since pre-industrial levels, or Europe it has been emitting, and it's the cumulative emissions that we have to care about. But it's high time that we go beyond that, because whether it is the US emitting, Europe emitting, India and China are emitting, at annual levels are high currently. We don't have a past to deal with, but currently we are doing that. It's not a reason that somebody else is, because somebody else is doing, we are also doing. And at the same time, we need to have development as well, sustainable development, right? So that is where, so whether we stop emitting or not, or whether we point somebody else, we are the people who is going to get affected the largest, because the vulnerable countries are in the tropics. These are the low to middle income nations, where the impacts of climate change is going to be the maximum. So the extremes in weather and climate is going to impact us most, where the population is also largest. Yeah, so the problem with, I'll give an answer in one sentence first. It generally means that we need action now. In the other sense, there is no specific threshold like 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius where something is going to tip, or by this year something is going to tip. It's a gradual change which we are already experiencing. It's for technical purpose or for policy purpose that we define. We need some threshold to understand, or reference point to say, okay, what will happen if the global temperature, now it's at 1 degree Celsius almost. And what will happen if your emissions until 1.5 or 2, can we keep below that? So that's a number which we can imagine, maybe human brains can imagine. So they try to fix something like that. Based on that, we see, okay, by 10 years it may reach 1.5 levels. So what the World Meteorological Organization, what their forecast is from 2020s, every year might be, the average temperatures might be above 1 degree Celsius. Yeah, so we are reaching that 1.5 degrees Celsius quite soon, and we might have episodes of 1.5 degrees Celsius also.
Okay.
It can be an opportunity where India
Yeah.
can be a leader in terms of innovation. You can see maybe 100, 200 years back, US and Europe came as the scientific and technological leaders. But when we are faced with an issue like climate change, it gives India an opportunity to invest in the science and technology of, say, example, renewable resources or efficient energy infrastructure. Because it's high time. If you see the recent Nobel Prize for Chemistry in 2019, it went to those scientists who developed the lithium-ion battery, which means it was such an important contribution to mankind to have a efficient mode of energy storage. Yeah. Otherwise, we would have consumed much more energy, and climate change might be much more. Same way with the incandescent lamps to LED lamps and all. So we are. So that's the kind of innovation I am talking about. So if we put our investment in this kind of building, in this kind of infrastructure, and also invest on renewable resources rather than depend on coal, India can be a world leader. And if we can be a world leader, it will be economic leader as well, not just showing as a model, but in terms of economy as well, we can outsource these kind of energy efficient modules or infrastructure and technology outside as well, right? That's a huge opportunity. And in terms of where we are now, where India is now, we had committed quite large in terms of renewable resources. That's around 175 gigawatts of renewable resources, out of which around 100 plus gigawatts is from solar power alone. But that's by 2022. Now we are already in 2020. But the actionable or the energy, the capacity which we can extract from is about currently based on the current infrastructure is around 35 gigawatts. Which means that we are still far away from reaching that 100 gigawatts goal. There is some work going on for 50 to 70 gigawatts. That's what I heard. Which means that we have committed, but that investment hasn't reached there probably, or it has to be worked out at a national level.
Hello everyone. Due to low battery, I couldn't record the message from Dr. Roxy Matthew, but he emphasized on the importance of trees, in recycled rain. For long, people have been thinking that water transferred from the trees and lost from the landscape. But rather than disappearing, it falls back, either over the same area or elsewhere. And this can be termed as recycled rain. So, forest not only influences the carbon storage, but also the water cycle, and thereby affects the local, regional or continental climate of a region. So the takeaway from this interview is that trees or forests or vegetation act as rainmakers. So it is important that we let them survive. I hope you have enjoyed learning with me. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next week. Take care. Love and light to you. Mwah.